We are recording this in case anyone has to miss on a Wednesday night, and you missed the lesson, or if you want to listen to it again because you missed something. I tend to go fast. So, and that will be on the website. Kristen will get it there. We'll do some editing and clean it up a bit, but we'll make that available to you. We've been really pleased at the turnout. This is just an amazing turnout, and people are still coming. And clearly the joy of the Lord is in this room, just hearing your laughter and your connections and speaking to one another. And I am so thrilled to be with you. And we've got folks zooming in. We go into the 5, 6, did I count it right? Which is great. And so let me just do a little self-introduction. And Kristen has been the most amazing person to work with. I'm sure you know how talented she is, but how kind, and she's just a woman of grace. We are so blessed to have her. My name is Kathie Magness. My husband and I just joined the church in April. We're newbies. We joined Easter Sunday here at Westview Baptist. We went to Cross Point. We went back and forth and back and forth. We live in the neighborhood. We live in Brace Heights, just the other side of Holcomb. But our goal was to be able to bike or walk to church, and now we can. We used to go to First Baptist, and we went to Second Baptist for a number of years, probably 15 years total, 20. And I taught at both First and Second. And then when the pandemic came, we Zoomed, like all of you did. And I'm sure you all did the same thing, a lot of soul searching during the pandemic, and you started reevaluating a lot of things in your life, not just church, but relationships and hobbies and all of it. And for us, a reflection was on church. Where did we want to plug in? And even though we were pretty plugged in at Second, and I was teaching and loved it, we wanted a church that was closer to us, and that we would maybe actually be worshiping with people we would possibly run into at the grocery store or see at the park. And then I think I saw Kristen at one of the first Sundays we came, and I said, I used to teach at First and Second. I would love the opportunity to teach here. So plug me in as a sub. I'm not looking for a big role initially because you have no idea who I am. But if you'd let me sub, and I've subbed 2 or 3 times here, and that was great. And I'll start teaching once a month with the seniors. But anyway, Kristen, so let me tell you a little history of this Be Brave thing. So a lot of the women that used to be in my Sunday school class at Second were Zooming also, but the Sunday school class was just not working for them. It wasn't, the Zoom thing didn't work for them. And so they came to me last May and they said, would you consider doing a women's Bible study in a home? And I thought, well, I sure am eager to teach again. We had just joined here, so this door hadn't quite opened yet. But we prayed about it, and God opened the door. And my deal was, okay, I'll teach, but you have to have 8 people. Because I spend about 20 hours of research for a lesson. And so I want to make sure there's at least 8 people counting me, right? Well, the Lord blessed us, and there were 16 ladies that would meet every Tuesday morning from 9:30 till 11:30, and we would study the women of the Bible. And so what we're going to do these next 6 weeks is exactly what I started doing with those ladies. And 2 of them were not believers, and now they are. And that's why we do this, right? That's why we do this. So I am so thrilled to be here with you today. I'm a lecture style teacher. I'm not here's a workbook, we're going to fill in the blanks together. We're not going to do that. I'm going to lecture. I'm going to occasionally invite a question. I might even put you in small groups. Occasionally I'll give you homework. I'll say for next week, I want you to do this. And I'll give you some homework to do. Kristen can send it out as well. And then maybe small groups to discuss it. The Zoom people can do their own breakout group. But generally, it's going to be pretty much a tell. However, I invite your questions. I invite anything you have to say. I'm an on-time person. We're going to start on time. We're going to end on time. If you have to go be in the choir or your children need you, I understand that. but my hope is that you'll be with us the whole time, every week. And if you miss a week, I understand that happens, but also you can watch it on Zoom. So with that, here we go. I asked all of you to actually have a Bible in your hand. That's how I learned to study. I know now many of you would prefer your iPad or your phone. I think there's something about holding God's word in your hand and hearing the pages ruffle. And if you don't mind accommodating that request in me, I would be most grateful. We are going to fly through a lot of verses tonight. I'm going to cover about 70 verses tonight. And it's easier, I think, if you are able to see pages side by side in the flow. It's harder on the phone when you just scroll and you don't see what was just said. So bear with me. At the end of it, you can tell me I was all wrong, or you can tell me, hey, I kind of liked holding my Bible. So if you could, when you come, bring your Bible. If you have your own Bible, feel free to write in the margins. My Bible is full of notes, and that's what it's for. If you're using one of the Bibles from the church, I know Kristen has some that are from the Lost and Found, and I'm sure she'd be glad to give you. And you can write in those. So anyway, are you ready? Here we go. We're going to discuss Lot's wife tonight. And you might say, why in the world are we discussing Lot's wife when this kind of whole thing is about being brave? If you know much about Lot's wife, she was anything but brave. But there are so many lessons that we can learn from her. And so my hope tonight is that we talk through the whole story. She's only mentioned in one verse in the Bible, but I'm going to read 70 because that gives us the context for her situation and what we can learn from her. Zoom people, can you hear okay? Okay, excellent. Thanks for being here with us. All right, so turn in your Bibles to Genesis, the first book of the Bible, chapter 12. I'm guessing too in this room we have people that have been studying the Bible their whole life and you know it well, very well, and other people may be newer. And so I'm going to try to cover all the bases and be as complete and thorough as I can in my explanations and things I try to draw forth for you. So here we go. And let me, one more thing. In your handouts, you've got two. The top page are the scripture verses. Flip that over. Where I'm going to want you to pay attention is the map. Zoom people, do you have the map? Excellent, because we're going to refer to it. Especially when you study the Old Testament, geography matters. A lot of the story of the Old Testament is about the geography. And so I'm going to reference that a lot. You can mark on your map and help follow along. So we're starting in chapter 12 of Genesis, verse 1. Abram at this point, his name is Abram. He has not had the covenant established with the Lord. The Lord said to Abram, go forth from your country and from your relatives and from your father's house. In other words, leave everything you have. He's in Haran. He's been there. We're going to find out in a minute. He's quite old. So he's been pretty well established in that community of Haran. And the Lord speaking to him says, leave everything and go to the land which I will show you. He doesn't even tell him yet where he's going to go. He just says, I want you to leave everything behind. And I will make you a great nation, and I will bless you, and I will make your name great, and so you shall be a blessing. You will make a difference. I have plans for you, Abram. But those plans aren't going to happen in Haran. I need you to go somewhere else. Have you ever been uprooted? Not wanting to go wherever it was you were going. Sometimes the Lord called you to go. Sometimes it was a family situation or a job and you didn't want to go. But if you are in the Lord, you will be blessed. He has work for you there. He has blessing for you there if you are obedient to the Lord. And I will bless those who bless you. Notice how many times he is telling Abram that he will be blessed in this leaving and going. And the one who curses you, I will curse. And in you, all of the families of the earth shall be blessed. So I've got a really big job for you, Abram, and I'm taking you somewhere different so you can do that job. Verse 4. So Abram went forth as the Lord had spoken to him, and Lot went with him. Now Abram was 75 years old when he departed from Haran. He'd lived a long life. You know, in the Bible, in the Old Testament, people live really long lives. 75 was young in the Bible. I just turned 70 last Wednesday, and I think 70 is young. But he was 75 when all this happened. Verse 5, and Abram took Sarai. Notice her name here is Sarai. Again, she's not been part of the covenant yet. His wife, and Lot, his nephew. So now we see the relationship between Abram and Lot. That's important. It's important to know Lot's roots, Lot's lineage, what Lot came from. Did he come from a godly family, or did he come from something else? Remember that. Abram took Sarah and Lot and all their possessions which they had accumulated, and the persons which they had acquired in Haran. They set out for the land of Canaan. Thus they came to the land of Canaan. So on your maps, at the topmost word location, the city is Haran. Circle it. If you don't have a pen, holler, borrow one. And then he sends him to the land of Canaan. So if you see the inset box on the big map, the inset box, this is where Abram is ultimately going to go. He's actually come from over here, near Ethiopia. But now he's in Haran, and the Lord has said, leave everything, and I want you to come to Canaan. And Abram passed through the land as far as the site of Shechem. So Shechem is on your map. It's in the inset box. It's the upper left city in the inset box. As far as the site of Shechem to the oaks of Moreh. Now the Canaanite was then in the land. So, you know, we hear a lot about Canaan in the Bible, in the land of milk and honey. We hear all those good things, but this is important. This land is occupied by people that were not God-fearing. So the Lord was sending Abram into enemy territory. Do you ever feel like the Lord is sending you into enemy territory? Maybe you did with COVID. Maybe you do at work. Maybe even in your own family is enemy territory. But the Lord is still with you. So the Canaanite was then in the land. Verse 7, and the Lord appeared to Abram and said, to your descendants I will give this land. So he built an altar there to the Lord who appeared to him. Over and over again, every time Abram gets somewhere, he builds an altar to the Lord. In thanksgiving, in praise, he may have sacrificed an animal that was part of the worship then. Then Abram proceeded from there to the mountain on the east of Bethel. Now, again, that's in your insert, but you can see it a little better on the insert. So they've gone from Shechem, now they're between Bethel, Luz, and Ai. And he pitched his tent with Bethel on the west and Ai on the east. And there he built an altar to the Lord and called upon the name of the Lord. Again, this is a very godly man. He's been obedient to what the Lord has called him to do. Even though it might have been difficult to leave, he goes and he blesses the Lord. Now the Lord is telling him, I'm going to do all these things for you. But my guess is he's kind of alone with his family in this desolate area, probably surrounded by people that he knows are not friendly. Verse 9, and Abram journeyed on, continuing toward the Negev. Now, wait a minute. Why is that? The Lord just brought him to Canaan, to Bethel, to Luz, to Ai. Verse 10 tells you why. Now, there was a famine in the land. So Abram went down to Egypt to sojourn there, for the famine was severe in the land. So they get there, there's a famine. They go further south. On your inset map, you can see the Negev. It's spelled N-E-G-E-B here, the Negev, the desert. Now, to me, that's kind of bizarre that they go to the desert to escape a famine. But there must have been water there. There must have been food. There must have been provision. We don't know. We know he went because of the famine in Bethel and Shechem and Ai. But the Bible doesn't tell us. We can only speculate. Okay. That's the context. We've gotten to see who Lot is in relation to Abram. We've gotten to see that Abram is a very godly man, godly and a very obedient man. Okay, got that? All right. Now I want you to turn to chapter, you don't have to turn. See, with that book, you could just look to the right-hand side. Turn to chapter 13. Starting in verse 1. So Abram went up from Egypt to the Negev, he and his wife and all that belonged to him, and Lot was with him. Lot's still hanging around. Now Abram was very rich in livestock, in silver, and in gold. And he went on his journeys from the Negev as far as Bethel, to the place where his tent had been at the beginning. He went right back to the place God had told him to go, between Bethel and Ai, to the place of the altar which he had made there formerly. And there Abram called on the name of the Lord. Verse 5. Now Lot, who went with Abram, also had flocks and herds and tents. So not only did Lot have the privilege of doing life with a godly man, Abram, but Abram's skill, Abram's blessing as a farmer, as a rancher, as a herdsman, allowed him to become a very wealthy man. So Lot had it made in the shade. And the land, verse 6, the land could not sustain them while dwelling together, for their possessions were so great that they were not able to remain together. So the land could only provide so many resources, so much water, so much nutrients from the soil. So there was this conflict brewing between Abram and Lot over the land. And there was strife between the herdsmen of Abram's livestock and the herdsmen of Lot's livestock. And one more time, the Canaanites and the Perizzites were dwelling in the land. So we see they're surrounded by people who eventually would go to war with the Jewish people. Verse 8, so Abram said to Lot, remember Abram is the older, Abram is the richer, Abram is the more godly, said to Lot, let there be no strife between you and me, nor between my herdsmen and your herdsmen, for we are brothers. So we've got this little issue going, but we're brothers. We can figure this out. Is not the whole land before you? Please separate from me. If you go to the left, I will go to the right. If you go to the right, I will go to the left. So how gracious of Abram to make this, because this is harsh land. There's a lot of desert here. There's not a lot of river here. But he says to Lot, you pick, you choose. Verse 10, and Lot lifted up his eyes and saw all the valley of the Jordan, that it was well watered everywhere. And this is an aside. This was before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. So that's coming later. So the author of Genesis is telling you that. Moses is telling you that. But it's really just an aside. Like the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt as you go to Zoar. So he's looking at your map, and he's looking towards the Jordan River. However, he mentioned this place called Zoar. If you look on your map, it's at the very, very bottom. What do you notice about the location of Zoar? What do you notice about it?
Near water.
It's
Near water.
near water. Yeah. What else?
By the Dead Sea.
It's by the Dead Sea.
It says Sodom and Gomorrah.
It's near Sodom and Gomorrah. All right. So here's Lot looking at the land, and he chooses to put himself close to this place, which is known for depravity in every way. Yes, there was fertile land elsewhere, but why he chose to go there after living with this godly man and experiencing the Jewish faith in all of its fullness, he had his eyes on Zoar. That'll come up again. So verse 11, Lot chose for himself all the valley of the Jordan. What a guy, right? What a guy. What does that tell you about him? selfish, greedy,
Doesn't make good decisions.
sorry,
Doesn't make good decisions.
doesn't make good decisions. He chose for,
I'm sorry, I was just gonna say, he also wasn't respectful of his elders.
no,
He should have been respectful of Abram and said, you choose first or whatever, and instead he's like, I want the best.
he wasn't respectful of his elders. He should have said to Abram, no, uncle, you choose first. But no, he grabbed what he thought was the most luscious land. And Lot journeyed eastward. Thus they separated from each other. So here we have a separation from, a physical separation from Abraham, between Abraham and Lot. Now, Abraham has never lets Lot out of his mind and out of his heart. We will see that again. But physically now, they are going to different places. Verse 12, Abram settled in the land of Canaan, enemy territory, while Lot settled in the cities of the valley and moved his tents as far as Sodom. He made Sodom his home. Now he wasn't just close to Sodom, he was living in Sodom. Now, the men of Sodom were wicked exceedingly, and sinners against the Lord. What was he thinking? What was he thinking? Verse 12, and the Lord said to Abram, after Lot had separated from him, now lift up your eyes and look from the place where you are, northward, southward, eastward, and westward. For all the land which you see, I will give to you and your descendants forever. So the Lord is still with Abram. He may have gotten the second choice in terms of the land, but the Lord was still going to bless him. And we know the Lord can do anything he wants to do, with anybody he wants to do it, whenever he wants to do it. And he is going to continue to bless Abram because he promised him he would. Verse 16, and I will make your descendants as the dust of the earth, so that if anyone can number the dust of the earth, then your descendants can also be numbered. That's kind of the first indication we get of this big blessing that's coming Abram's way. Arise, walk about the land through its length and its breadth, for I will give it to you. And Abram moved his tent and came and dwelt by the oaks of Mamre, which are in Hebron, and there he built a temple, an altar to the Lord. So you can see Mamre on your map. It's kind of in the middle between the Negev and Bethel and Luz. So this is where he is. He's in the heart of Canaanite country. Lot has gone to Sodom, and he's living in this den of iniquity. Okay? All right. I am not going to go through chapters 14, 15, a couple of the others in detail, but I'm gonna summarize them for you.
Kathy, where is Abram on this map? I've got lost.
Abram,
Yeah, where is he located right now?
right now, he is in Mamre,
Say again?
Mamre, M-A-M-R-E, verse 18. He dwelt by the oaks of Mamre. There must have been huge trees there. They used,
Okay, got it, thanks.
yeah, there's I think it's Miriam, when we study Miriam, we're going to do Miriam in a couple weeks. She was located by a giant palm tree. So they didn't have maps. They didn't have GPS or MapQuest. They had to go by landmarks, trees, rocks, rivers. Thanks for the question. Yeah, okay. So in verse 14, there's a war between two different groups of people, and they actually kidnap. Verse 12, they took Lot, Abram's nephew, and his possessions and departed, for he was living in Sodom. So these kings went after Lot, captured him probably for his wealth. Later on, verse 14, chapter 14, when Abram heard that his relative Lot had been taken captive, he let out his trained men, blah, 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 and they got Lot back. So here's the first time we see Lot rescued. Remember I said they separated physically, but Abram never released Lot from his heart. He was still the uncle to this man. He's not a young boy anymore, he's a man. First example of redemption, of someone being saved, plucked out of the pit. Verse 15 is when the Lord makes the covenant with Abram. And verse 6, you all probably know this verse. Then Abram believed in the Lord, and he reckoned it to him as righteousness. It was Abram's faith in God that allowed him to be called righteous. So now we have the beginning of the formal covenant between Abram, soon to be Abraham, and the Lord. Then Sarah, they heard, you know this story too. They had heard that the Lord was going to bless them with all these descendants, as many as there were stars in the sky, grains of sand on the shore, and yet they were barren and they were in their 90s. And we'll study Sarah later in the session. But Sarah decides to take matters in her own hands. When you don't get what you want, do you ever take matters into your own hands? And how's that working for you?
Sometimes very well.
Sometimes very well. Hopefully you went to the Lord and the Lord guided some of that. Sometimes maybe not. But in this case, it worked out very, very badly. And Hagar, the slave, became pregnant with Abram's son. And the rest is history. Verse 17 is the circumcision of Abraham and the covenant, the formal covenant. His name shall be Abraham instead of Abram, for I will make you the father of a multitude of nations. This has been coming. This has been repeated. I think this is the third or fourth time Abraham has been told that. But now he's telling them, you're going to have a son, the son that I want you to have with your wife Sarah. And when you do that, all these heirs are going to come through that relationship. All right, now, chapter 18, things get really juicy. Picking up in verse 18, chapter 18, verse 18. No, chapter 20. Context here. Abraham has been again in conversation with the Lord. This comes on the heels of the Lord telling them that Sarah will get pregnant. They are both in their 90s. They laugh because it's a physical impossibility, and yet Sarah, we know, becomes pregnant. But Abraham is there and he's talking. And the Lord said, the outcry of Sodom and Gomorrah is indeed great, and their sin is exceedingly grave. So the story has been about Abraham up till this point, but now there's a bit of a shift to Sodom and Gomorrah. The Lord says, I will go down now and see if they have done entirely according to its outcry, which has come to me, and if not, I will know. In other words, I've been hearing all these things about Sodom and Gomorrah. I'm going to go check it out. Now, did the Lord need to go check it out? No. So there must have been some other reason for him to want to go down. What could that possibly be? Why else might the Lord want to make an appearance? Now, he's going to do it through two angels. He's not himself going to go. We're going to find in a minute. He's going to do it through two angels. Why in the world might he want to go? Change people's hearts. Who's in particular? Lots. Yeah. Maybe to redeem the people. You know, the Lord doesn't want evil people to die. He just wants them to change, to come to him. So maybe that was why. We don't really know. To help Lot escape, help Lot get him out of there, and then work on his heart. We don't know. I will go down now and see if they have done entirely according to its outcry, which has become known to me. We talked about that. Then the Lord turned away, then the men, the angels, turned away from there and went towards Sodom, while Abram is still standing before the Lord. Now there's a negotiation that takes place. This is chapter 18, verse 23 and following. When Abram came near and said to the Lord, here's Abraham making a deal, negotiating with the Lord. Wilt thou indeed sweep away the righteous with the wicked? In other words, I know you want to get rid of the wicked, but there's probably some righteous people there that should be saved. Abram goes on to say, suppose there are 50 righteous people within the city. Wilt thou indeed sweep it away and not spare the place for the sake of the 50 righteous who are in it? Far be it from you, God, to do such a thing, to slay the righteous with the wicked. so that the righteous and the wicked are treated alike. Far be it from thee. Shall not the judge of all the earth deal justly? Abraham was making a plea for 50 people, probably Lot's extended family. So the Lord said, if I find in Sodom 50 righteous within the city, then I will spare the whole place on their account. And Abram answered and said, now behold, I have ventured to speak to the Lord, although I am but dust and ashes. Suppose the 50 righteous are lacking 5. Wilt thou destroy the whole city because of 5? And the Lord said, I will not destroy it if I find 45 there. And he spoke to him, Abraham, and yet again, and he said, suppose 40 are found there. Why do you think he keeps dropping the numbers? Do you think there's 50 righteous people in Sodom? Probably not. Do you think there's 40? Suppose there are 40 found there. I will not do it on account of the 40. Then he said, oh, may the Lord not be angry, and I shall speak. Suppose 30 are found there. And he said, I will not do it if 30 are there. And he said, now behold, I have ventured to speak to the Lord. Suppose 20 are found there. And he said, I will not destroy it on account of the 20. Then he said, oh, may the Lord not be angry, and I shall speak only one more time. Suppose 10 are found there. And he said, I will not destroy it on account of the 10. As soon as he had finished speaking to Abraham, the Lord departed, and Abraham returned to his place. You think there were 10 people, 10 righteous people in Shechem? I mean, now, chapter 19. I want you for this chapter to pretend, imagine you are Lot's wife. Okay? Just imagine. Now the 2 angels came to Sodom in the evening as Lot was sitting in the gate of Sodom. The gate of a city it's like my husband and I just got done with a 2.5-month road trip. And every town, itty bitty to massive, has a visitor center, right? Has a town square, has something they want you to see. You come into town and they've got all the billboards with the things you can't miss when you're there. So here we have Lot sitting at the gate of Sodom. So that was kind of a welcoming position for him. Some of the commentaries say by now he was also a leader in Sodom. So he didn't just live there. He was actually either the mayor or a judge. He was in a very prestigious position. So he wasn't just any old guy. He was sitting in Sodom. When Lot saw them, he rose to meet them. These are the 2 men, angels. They weren't dressed like angels. They were dressed like men, and bowed down with his face to the ground. So we talked earlier about Lot didn't show any respect, any reverence toward Abraham. And yet here, for these 2 men, total strangers that have just showed up on the doorstep of Sodom, and when he saw them, he bowed down his face to the ground. Now, in those days, hospitality was a really important thing. You know, we think we have good hospitality today, but then it was like paramount, because there were large distances between towns and communities. This is difficult land. It's desert, it's dry, it's arid. People would have been dusty and dirty, and there weren't hotels, there weren't motels. You didn't have a hotel tonight where you can find a room. You were at the mercy of wherever you stopped. So hospitality was a big deal. And Lot said to them, now behold, my lords, please turn aside into your servant's house. Come stay in my house and spend the night and wash your feet, that you may rise early and go on your way. So he's offering them hospitality. Come stay at my house, do the usual things, take a bath, clean up, we'll eat, we'll have a nice meal, we'll have a nice conversation. But then he says, so that you may rise early and go on your way. what was behind Lot's thinking when he said that to the men?
He knew it was a danger.
It's a dangerous place. He didn't want them sticking around. He didn't want word to get out because these guys were traveling on to the next town. What Lot didn't know is everybody was already talking about this decadent place. They said, however, no, we shall spend the night in the square. What's the worst place to spend the night if you're on the road and you don't have lodging in the square? So this would have been abhorrent to Lot, the mayor, the judge, the leader of the city, who certainly didn't want these men staying there. Verse 3, yet he urged them strongly. Lot really pushed hard. So they turned aside to him and they entered his house, and he prepared a feast for them and baked unleavened bread, and they ate. Sounds like a happy conclusion to that moment at the city gate. Remember, you're Lot's wife now. This probably would not have been unusual to have two visitors come, and you would have been accustomed to making more food, more bread, more wine, whatever was customary. So right now, this is all probably pretty normal for you, Lot's wife. Verse 4, before they lay down. So they've had dinner, they've had their wine, they've had a conversation, they're getting ready for bed. Before they get to bed, the men of the city, the men of Sodom, surrounded the house, both young and old, all the people from every quarter. Word got out. We've got these two guys that are new to town. Verse 5, and they called to Lot and said to him, where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out to us that we may have relations with them. They intend the name Sodom, and the word sodomy comes from Sodom. The intent was to sexually exploit these two men. Remember, these are the two men that Lot has just offered this hospitality to, and he's brought them into his home to protect them. Because Lot knew that these men from the city would come, knock on his door, and want these two guys. But Lot went out to them at the doorway, and he shut the door behind him. They're inside. You're Lot's wife. The two guests are there. Lot's got two daughters, their two sons-in-laws, Lot himself, the two angels. Protected little group in a home that was probably relatively safe with these people storming the home. Think about the insurrection on January 6th. That's the picture I have when I read this. People storming the Capitol. Nothing about politics. Literally, if you watch that, the shock and knowing that was a mob out of control. That's what I picture here. These people that have come from the entire city, every quarter, he says, have come. Lot goes out and says, please, my brothers, do not act wickedly. Please, my brothers, do not act wickedly. That is a kind statement. I would say something a little firmer. Please, brothers. Now behold, I have two daughters, which have not had relations with men. They are virgins. Please let me bring them out to you and do to them whatever you like. Only do nothing to these men, inasmuch as they have come under the shelter of my roof. My hospitality, my reputation for my hospitality is far more important than my daughters. Do you think Lot had fallen down the slippery slope? I cannot imagine being further away from God than this moment for him. I can't imagine offering my daughters as a substitute for two strangers, knowing what would become of them. But the men, the marauders said, stand aside. Furthermore, they said, this one, talking about Lot now, this one came as an alien, and already he is acting like a judge. Remember, he came from Haran initially, and then through the promised land down to, so he was considered an outsider. You know how we can be sometimes with outsiders where we're not terribly friendly. In this case, they were now rejecting him as a leader because they said he was from the outside. And he didn't want to play along with this sick little game. This one came as an alien, and already he is acting like a judge. Now we will treat you worse than that. So now they're threatening Lot to sodomize him, to prevail over him. So they pressed hard against Lot and came near to break the door. Lot's outside. They're standing there. But the men, these are the angels, but the men reached out in their hands and brought Lot into the house with them and shut the door. That is supernatural strength. When you have all those people crushing the door and Lot is out there and these two men reach and they pull him in and they shut the door against this crowd. So here's another intervention by the Lord to try to save Lot. Verse 11, and they struck, the angels struck the men who were at the doorway of the house with blindness, both small and great, so that they wearied themselves trying to find the doorway. Everything was black to them. They were blind. They were also confused. The Lord also created a spirit of confusion. They didn't know where they were. They couldn't see, but nothing was making sense. So the Lord can do that. He can create confusion. And he did that in this case, so that they could no longer pursue Lot, the men, his daughters. Then the men said to Lot, whom else have you here? They were ready for anyone. A son-in-law and your sons and your daughters and whomever you have in the city, bring them out of this place. For we are about to destroy this place because their outcry has become so great before the Lord. And the Lord, sorry. This is the angel. The angels are saying to Lot, who else is here? We need to get everybody out. Whom else have you here? A son-in-law, your sons, your daughters, whomever you have in the city. Bring them out of this place. We need to get out of here now. For we are about to destroy the angels. We are about to destroy this place because their outcry had become so great before the Lord, and the Lord has sent us to destroy. So here's the Lord following up. You know, there are not 10 righteous people here. He's fixing to destroy. And Lot went out and spoke to his sons-in-law who were to marry his daughters. Remember, in those days, once you were betrothed, you actually lived with the parents. I think of either side, but in this case, the bride. They had not consummated their marital relationship, but they were living together, so they were considered sons-in-law. Lot went to them, said, up, get out of this place, for the Lord will destroy the city. But he appeared to his sons-in-law to be jesting. Why do you think his sons-in-law thought he was jesting? Didn't believe in God? Why else?
Living righteously.
Lot hadn't been living righteously.
I don't think Lot was doing the right thing.
Maybe it was, this seems kind of mealy-mouthed to me. Up, get out of this place, for the Lord will destroy the city. Maybe his tone wasn't firm enough. Maybe there wasn't enough urgency in his voice.
Or maybe they were happy there.
Maybe they were happy there. Absolutely. Even when we leave something bad for us, there's still a longing, right? And when the morning dawned, the angels urged Lot, saying, so another day has passed. Up, take your wife and your 2 daughters who are here, lest you be swept away in the punishment of the city. But he, Lot, hesitated. Can you imagine that? Now you're Lot's wife. What are you thinking? I want to kick this guy. So the men seized his hand, the angel seized his hand and the hand of his wife and the hands of his daughters, for the compassion of the Lord was upon them, and they brought him out and put him outside the city. And it came about when they had brought them outside that one said, 4 instructions. Number 1, escape for your life. This is not a trivial matter. This is a matter of life and death. Have you ever been in a situation where it was pretty clear to you that you needed to make a choice between life and death? Number 2, do not look behind you. Why? Why would the angels be telling them not to look behind them? Don't look behind you. Why?
Like a test of faith.
Test of faith. We're going forward. We're not going backwards. We're going forward. What else?
Distractions.
Distractions.
Whatever they were doing could have been so devastating that seeing it could have just destroyed them.
Yes,
Just the power of what was happening.
right. I mean, Sodom was going to destroy them in and of itself. But now the Lord is going to wipe out Sodom because the sin was egregious to him. Number 3, do not stay anywhere in the valley. Look at your map again. Do not stay anywhere in the valley. Don't stay anywhere near Sodom. Don't stay anywhere near Zoar. Don't stay anywhere near that valley of Siddim. Get out. Go back to Abraham. Go back to where you were. Go back to living a godly life. Number 4, escape to the mountains lest you be swept away. And the mountains is the area where Abraham was. 4, really clear instructions. Escape for your life. Do not look back. Do not stay anywhere in the valley and go to the mountains. Pretty clear? Easy to understand. Easy to do because they've got these 2 angels there that are taking them by the hand. Literally, you saw that. But Lot said to them, verse 18, oh no, no, my lords. Now, behold, your servant has found favor in your sight. Really? And you have magnified your loving kindness, which you have shown me by saving my life. But I cannot escape to the mountains, lest the disaster overtake me and I die. He's trying to negotiate with the angels to go to somewhere different than where the Lord is wanting him to go. And now behold, this town is near enough to flee to, and it is small. Please let me escape there. Is it not small? Like a small town that's decadent is better than a big town that's decadent? Amazing logic that my life may be saved. And he said to them, behold, this is the angel speaking, and behold, I grant you this request also, not to overthrow the town of which you have spoken. Hurry, escape there, for I cannot do anything until you arrive there. In other words, okay, Lot, I'll take you to the place you want to go. It's not any of the 4, you're not following any of the 4 instructions, but I will take you there. But you've got to go there now because I'm getting ready to destroy Sodom. And if you don't get there quick, you're going to be part of it. Therefore, the name of the town was called Zoar. Remember I told you earlier that would come up again. Early on, somewhere in chapter 12 or 13, there was even reference to Zoar. It's almost like a premonition. This was chapter 13, verse 10, when he was admiring, when Lot was looking at the choice. Abraham, Lot picking the land that they wanted, and Lot chose the land, like the land of Egypt as you go to Zoar. Way back when. He had it in his mind. Do you have a place you want to go? My husband and I finished this road trip, like I told you, and we have a home in Canada. I think some of you saw the video that I filmed from there. And I always tell myself, I want to live in Santa Barbara. And so we on our trip, we went to Santa Barbara. It's like, I've been to Santa Barbara one time for 2 hours. What in the world would make me want to move to Santa Barbara? We spent 4 days there, and I thought, I don't live in Santa Barbara. I'm perfectly happy with what I have. But somehow, Lot had it in his mind that he wanted to live in Zoar. Anyway, the sun, verse 23. The sun had risen over the earth when Lot came to Zoar. So they got there. Just as the angel said, we got to get there, because as soon as we get there, Sodom and Gomorrah are going to cease to exist. Then the Lord rained on Sodom and Gomorrah brimstone and fire from the Lord out of heaven. And he overthrew those cities and all the valley and all the inhabitants of the cities and what grew on the ground. In the Old Testament, over and over and over again, the words utterly destroyed is used when God is talking about a people group, a city, a location that is abominable to him. And he said, you must utterly destroy these people. Why? Because he didn't want them to procreate, to reproduce, and to have that continue. This is what happened here. It was utterly destroyed. Those towns are now at the bottom of that salt sea lake, the Dead Sea Lake. They are under the water. There is absolutely nothing left of them. They are gone. They have been obliterated. Verse 26, here we go. The one and only mention of Lot's wife. But his wife from behind him looked back, and she became a pillar of salt. What do you think God didn't take Lot out?
He was a descendant of Abraham.
Sorry?
He was in the same bloodline as Abraham.
He was in the same bloodline as Abraham, but even one step further, Abraham asked for protection for Lot. God didn't
ask for his wife too.
I guess not. You know, he's an interesting guy. Offering his daughters, offering his wife, you know. Anyway, she became a pillar of salt. She was covered with all of the fire of the brimstone, and she died. Why? Because she looked back. If we are obedient to the Lord's leading, we need to follow it hook, line, and sinker. It's not part of it, but it's all of it. And it's hard. I asked you earlier, some of you have the Lord has led you to another place. And I saw some head nods. And it's hard to leave a place that you know well, even if it's a place that you know is not good for you. Because you had friends there. You had hobbies there. You had maybe a family there. You knew it. It was comfortable. And leaving it, pulling up stakes from a place like that can be so difficult. And yet, if it is God's will, then we must go. I'll tell you a personal story. I lived in New Orleans for my 20s, right out of college, lived in New Orleans. And I had a really good time. A really, really, really good time. And I destroyed a marriage. I destroyed friendships. I destroyed everything that I had taught mattered in life. And I was on a downhill spiral that there was no coming out of on my own. And I remember Memorial Day weekend of 1982, having a conversation with the Lord. I was in tears and I said, Lord, I have gotten myself into a mess. I have put myself, Beth Moore's word, into the pit. And I cannot get out. I cannot scrape out. So if you will get me out of this mess, I will devote the rest of my life to serving you. You will become my true north. You will become the person I live for. And he did. He answered me. He told me where to go. It was a most unusual place. But he said, don't look back. Because I had friends there, lots of friends. I had lots of good times there. But I knew I could not stay there because the outcome would not have been good. My brothers, I have twin brothers that are 4 years younger than me, 6 years younger than me. And I called them and I said, can you come down to New Orleans? I didn't have, when I left my husband, I left the house, I left everything. So I didn't have much to my name anyway, but I needed a small U-Haul truck to move to Indianapolis, which is where the Lord took me. And I cried all the way to Jackson, Mississippi, and my brother, no air conditioning. So my brothers couldn't even drown me out with air conditioning. And they said, what have we signed up for? Here's this woman, you know, why are you leaving if you're crying so hard? But what I knew is that I could not stay and survive. I would have destroyed everything in my path. Did I miss it? You bet I did. Did I long for it? You bet I did. Did I look back? No. I had to look forward. I had to say, what's God got for me? Now, if he's taking me If he's taking me to the Oaks of Mamre, I know he's going to bless me. I know he has good things for me. Was it easy? No. Did it make a difference? Absolutely. Am I a different person? Absolutely. We all have places we've had to leave. You may be in a situation now that you need to leave. You may have habits now that you need to stop. You may have relationships that are broken that need to be fixed or walked away from. If you are in his will, if you go to him in prayer, if your heart is about pleasing and serving the Lord, he will bless you and he will make a way. The story goes on. Did Lot learn anything? Verse 27, chapter 19. Now Abraham rose early in the morning and he went to the place where he had stood before the Lord. And he looked down toward Sodom and Gomorrah, toward all the land of the valley. And he saw and behold, the smoke of the land ascended like the smoke of a furnace. Abraham went and he saw the total destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. Thus it came about when God destroyed the cities of the valley that God remembered Abraham and set Lot out of the midst of the overthrow when he overthrew the cities where Lot lived. So here we see God redeeming Lot again because of the promise he had made to Abraham. Prayer matters. Be a prayer warrior for those who need your prayers. God hears them. You may be the prayer. You may have the prayer that God hears. You may have the sincerity and the passion in your heart for that person or that broken relationship that God listens to and acts on. Verse 30, and Lot went up from Zoar and he stayed in the mountains and his 2 daughters with him, for he was afraid to stay in Zoar. And he stayed in a cave and his 2 daughters. Did Lot learn anything? Nope. Here we go. It gets worse. Then the firstborn, verse 31, it can't be. Then he said to the younger, our father is old, and there is not a man on the earth to come into us after the manner of the earth. In other words, there are no men here, and so there's no men for us to marry. We can't have children. Our dad's here. Come, let us make our father drink wine, and let us lie with him, that we may preserve our family through our father. They had grown up in Sodom, and they had taken on all those same attributes, all that same sinfulness, that total lack for godliness. Verse 33, so they made their father drink wine that night, and the firstborn went in and lay with her father, and he did not know when she lay down or when she arose. And it came about on the morrow that the firstborn said to the younger, behold, I lay last night with my father. Let us make him drink wine again tonight, and then you can do the same thing. Therefore, we can preserve our family. Verse 35, so they made their father drink wine, and that night again the younger arose and lay with him, and she did not know when she lay down or when she arose. He did not know. Then both the daughters of Lot were with child by their father. And the firstborn bore a son and called his name Moab. And he is the father of the Moabites to this day. As for the younger, she bore a son and called his name Ben-Ami. He is the father of the sons of Ammon to this day. What do you know about the Moabites and the Ammonites?
Continually fought.
Sorry?
They continually fought.
Continually fought. Were they godly?
No.
No.
Against Israel, against the Jews.
They, sorry?
Both of them are enemies of Israel to this day.
Enemies of Israel to this day. That has never stopped. All this fighting that we see goes right back to this event in Zoar. Lot didn't learn a thing, not a thing, and nor his daughters. So that wicked deed has precipitated itself for many thousand years.
How did you speculate? Did he actually participate in Sodom and Gomorrah's evils? it doesn't say.
It doesn't say, we don't know. You can,
But his behavior, his actions.
he tolerated it. What's the other word? When you tolerate something, when you allow it to happen, condoned it. He condoned it. He even got in a leadership position where he could have influenced.
If he was a judge or leader there, it's like he was approving of what they were doing.
And think about how timid he was, even talking about to his family about, you know, he was pretty relaxed. My sense of even getting out, you know, maybe this will pass. But they lived in that lifestyle. It was all around them. You know, if you're living in a situation where the lifestyle around you is evil, you know that. Do you accept it or do you walk away from it? That's part of that story I told. I had to get away from the evil that I had allowed into my life. I'm not saying anything bad about New Orleans. It was what I had allowed into my life. I was the only person, with God's help, that could get out, that could get away. I recognized. He didn't recognize it. He didn't recognize it. So, lots of lessons. What are your takeaways from these 70 plus verses? Only one about Lot's wife. What are your takeaways? Poor Lot? Poor Lot's wife?
Yeah.
You know, wives didn't have a voice then. Women didn't have any say. How hard that must have been.
But she looked back. That means she didn't believe. It's like she wasn't a believer.
No, she wanted to go back. Come on,
Yeah.
honey. Let's go back. It wasn't so bad. We don't have to offer our daughters. Let's put those men out. That'll fix it. What do you take away? What is in your heart right now that you can take? Because we can't learn a lot of good from Lot's wife, but what can you learn in general about life and about evil? Don't look back. You know, part of the don't look back is the regret. I regret I did that. But the Lord has forgiven it. And if we look back and keep wallowing in shame, that's not what the Lord has for us. So if you've walked away from it, glory, hallelujah. But if you're still living in shame, that's not, God has forgiven you. He loves you no matter what. If you've hurt people, make amends, fix it, walk away. What else do you take away?
Kathy, I also think that, Lot pitched his tent near Sodom. First little step there. And then the next thing we know, he's setting in the gate. He keeps inching toward that lifestyle
That's
and
right.
seems not to reject it in a, huge way. Up to
that
willing to take his daughters to those men.
Absolutely. That first step, that when he was choosing the land, that was his first step into this sinful place that destroyed his life. It's that first step. You know, a lot of times it's pretty subtle. We try something, or we see somebody, or we go somewhere and we think, oh, it's no big deal. And then we do it a second time. Oh, that was kind of fun. And it's the third time, and it's the fourth time, and the fifth time we find ourselves in a mess. Stop at the first step, the first movement towards evil and towards temptation. Surround yourself with godly people that can help you make good choices. What else do you take away?
Well, this was the first time I think I've ever thought about Lot's wife not saying anything to him when he chose the land. And why did you do that? Aren't you going to get in trouble? It's your uncle, and then also with the daughters. Why she didn't say, I know there's been lots of studies that basically Sodom was homosexual, whatever, going for this. So they didn't even want, I don't know how you would say, normal sex. They didn't want heterosexual sex. They wanted homosexual sex. But she didn't even say, you don't read that she said, don't take the daughters. Now I know it's a wife, and women didn't speak up, but she wasn't strong. She didn't stand up for some things like, with her husband taking the property, with the daughters, how they were raised and so forth. Their hearts were, her heart was in the wrong place. I mean, God's the only one that knows our hearts, but she, her heart was wrong.
So the comment was, Lot's wife could have intervened a lot earlier. She was from Sodom.
Yes, I was just gonna say.
She was from
it doesn't
Sodom.
Say where that she was even with him when
Right.
he chose the land. He would have probably found her
Right.
there.
Now, if he had gone somewhere else, would he have picked a more godly wife?
Maybe.
Maybe.
Maybe not.
Let's hope. Maybe not.
Yeah.
Maybe not. But she was from Sodom, so she was raised in that environment. But you would think she would, of course, we don't know what actually went on. We only know what scripture has recorded.
Well, if you think about the city as a whole and the wickedness of that whole city and surrounding cities, that if she had grown up there, that the behavior of the men wouldn't have been foreign to her at
It
that
was not,
point, and wouldn't have been something that she might have been saying, Lot, why are you acting this way? Why aren't you? And may have been the one to tell him to, or to offer his daughters.
So-
that might have just been what happened.
the comment was because she was from Sodom, maybe this behavior was normal to her. Maybe some of these things didn't seem egregious, didn't seem awful. Do you know the story of the frog in the pot of water? If you have a pot of water and you put it on the stove and you don't, and you boil it, you put it on high and pot of water is boiling and it's a rapid boil, a hot boil, and you drop in a frog, what does the frog do? He jumps out. But same pot of water, room temperature, you put it on the stove and you put it on low, and you just gradually goes to sort of low to medium to sort of high to high. Eventually it comes to a boil. What happens to the frog? He boils to death. Why? He got comfortable. He didn't even notice the temperature rising. It was, oh, this is kind of warm. I'm used to playing in the mud out there and it's cold, and now I'm in this warm place and it feels cozy. It feels comfortable. But then if I stay there too long, so it's a wonderful analogy. What else do you take away?
I'm captured by two things in the story from this movie. One is the amazing grace that God showed Lot on behalf of his love for Abraham, right? Because of Abraham's righteousness. And that translates powerful as a mom, what my relationship with the Lord can do for people that I love in my family, people that I care about that may not be saved. And God can show mercy because of my relationship with them. And then I think about what God is going to do with Sodom if he found, 10 righteous people. And it translates to our country for me. And we can be praying for more than 10 righteous people.
Yeah. So the comment being, Lori was struck by God's graciousness, his mercy, and how he came to bat for Lot because of Abraham, and how we can know that God will do that same thing for us. I have to tell you this. I taught this in early June for the first time, maybe May, I don't know. But this today, last night I got my notes all out and I did a walkthrough today. I watched the videotape I had done before. This time I picked up the redemption theme through here. I missed that before, but over and over again, we see God intervening in subtle and not so subtle ways. And he is doing that today. We just need to ask for it.
Whenever I've read this story, I have to say it bothers me that she turned into a pillar of salt. There was no grace there. That has always kind of bothered me. I know, but what it says is when he tells you to do something, he wants you to do it, but still bothers you. She turned into a pillar of salt.
Some of the commentaries say, so another Laura, Laura commented, it's always bothered her that there was no grace for Lot's wife. She was turned into a pillar of salt. The commentarians say it's because her heart, she didn't have the heart of any remorse or redemption. She just wanted to go back to that lifestyle. It was comfortable for her. She had a lot of money there. They were prominent. She had 2 beautiful daughters that were engaged to be married. You could say, in a worldly sense, she had it all working. So there wasn't a heart desire for anything different. And I think the Lord can work on people that haven't quite come there, but there has to be a willingness to believe that there's hope in the Lord. Hers was all about getting back to what she knew.
Because she was being taken out. That was grace. She
Well,
had the opportunity.
Yeah, she wasn't going to live in that anymore.
Didn't recognize it.
Didn't recognize it.
You wonder what kind of a parent and mom she was, because her daughters didn't have a problem, like the way they thought, like sleeping with the dad. Like, you wonder how much time she spent with her daughters and is there any teaching.
Concern was you got to wonder about what kind of mom she was anyway. Be mindful of who you hang out with. Be mindful of what you read. Be mindful of what you watch. Be mindful of stinking thinking, of the thoughts that you know are not godly, that are not taking you to a better place. Not better stuff, not more money, to a better you, to a, not a woo-woo you, but is your heart in the right direction? Don't play with fire. Don't do it. It will burn you up. One more comment and then we'll wrap up.
I'm just noticing one for all the depravity that there was in Sodom. Why is it that the daughters, he says the daughters have never slept with the man? Why was there still that in place for women? But yet the men could do, I guess, as they please.
So the question was, is a place as deprived as that, how could those women have remained virgins? And maybe that was the only thing the mother did, is get her girls in, she homeschooled them. I don't know, that's a great question. But somehow they were protected from it. But the husband, the son, the to-be husbands sounded like they were not godly and they would not have been godly husbands. I don't think so. Anyway, that is it. We are 2 minutes from 7:15. Next week, I caught it today when I was looking through everything. I said to Christian, oh no, I told everybody next week we were going to talk about Hagar. Remember who Hagar is? She's the maid of Sarah that Abraham. We're not going to do Hagar next week. We're going to do Rahab. She's a prostitute. I'm not sure which situation, but we're going to do Rahab next week. And she's got an amazing, amazing story of grace and how God can use anyone, no matter your past, no matter what you've done. God still has a plan for you, no matter how old you are, no matter how young you are. God can do with you what he wants. So let me close this in prayer. Heavenly Father, thank you for these ladies that are here in person or on Zoom. I'm so grateful for them, for their beautiful faces and their gorgeous smiles and their eagerness to know more about you. We're so grateful for the many, many examples you give us in Scripture, good ones and bad ones. Each of them teach us. Help us to take these lessons and to absorb them and to live more fully for you, Lord. Thank you for this church and the ministries it offers and this series in particular. I'm so grateful. We ask all of this in your precious Son's name. Amen.